the Book of the Heavenly Cow. This is one of the oldest stories we have from ancient Egypt. It was thought of as ancient as far back as 2180 BC. And the pharaohs thought of it as so important to preserve they had the story inscribed in their tombs. When I read the story I'm about to read you, all I could think about were the countless other flood myths, and stories like the Adam and Eve end of the world story, the Younger Dryas theory, and the crustal displacement theory. We know that many ancient cultures spoke of poles changing, and a time when the earth wobbled. And there are even theories of ancient structures being built in alignment with these previous poles. But this story actually speaks of the sun itself in the form of Ra, the sun god, and the goddess figure he would set loose on the earth, destroying humanity, causing floods and destruction. Just let me read this to you. This is from worldhistory.org. The Book of the Heavenly Cow is an ancient Egyptian text dealing with the rebellion of humanity against the sun god, Ra, his destruction of the rebels through the goddess Hathor, the reversal of this decision and Ra's mercy, and his ascent into the higher heavens, leaving Earth in a fallen state. The work has been compared to the Mesopotamian Atrahasis and the biblical tale of Noah, and is thought to have been known in some form during the First Intermediate Period, 2181 to 2040 BC, and first written down during the Middle Kingdom, 2040 to 1782 BC. The texts were found in the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, Ramses III, and Ramses VI. The famous photo of the interior of the tomb of Tutankhamun, from after it was opened in 1922, shows a bed frame in the shape of the heavenly cow. Since it is surrounded by other objects, is more often overlooked than appreciated, except for the tomb of Ramses VI, which contained the text on papyrus sheets. The myth was found inscribed on the walls of the tombs, and none of them on their own are complete. It is only by combining the different finds that scholars have been able to assemble the work, and even so, the conclusion has been lost. The central narrative of humanity's rebellion and the gods' reaction, however, is complete. The title of the work has been translated as the Book of the Cow of Heaven, the Book of the Celestial Cow, the Destruction of Mankind, and the Destruction of Humanity. Since it was composed before Atrahasis, 17th century BC, or the Great Flood story from the Book of Genesis, earliest date of composition 15th century BC, the Book of the Heavenly Cow may have inspired these later works, as all deal with the strikingly similar theme. The tale begins after Ra had created the world and was king of the gods of humanity. Prior to the beginning of the story, an audience would have been acquainted with the creation myth, in which Ra, in his form of Atum, stood on the primordial mound in the presence of the god Nun, and created order out of chaos with the help of Heka, the god of magic, and through the agency of magic, aided by the wisdom of Thoth. Afterwards, Ra created the gods Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus, the elder, known as the lesser gods, when compared to the creator gods such as Ra or Nun. The story begins with humans plotting against Ra because he has grown old, and they feel he can no longer manage the affairs of the world. Ra hears of their scheme to overthrow him, and calls the other gods to council to ask their advice on how to proceed. Nun, the primeval force from which creation sprang, advises Ra to send his eye to smite the humans, and Ra agrees. The Eye of Ra is most often personified as the goddess, who either does Ra's bidding or escapes from his control to wreak havoc in a far-off land, before either returning or being forced to come back. These episodes are characterized by Egyptologists as a type of story known as the distant goddess. and they always involve a transformation of some sort. The Book of the Heavenly Cow is just this type of story as Ra chooses Hathor to carry out his will and destroy humanity. Hathor is released on the world and does her job well, killing thousands, but then Ra repents and tells her to stop. Hathor, who has now become Sekhmet, is crazed by bloodlust and will not return to Ra. Ra then orders 7,000 jars of beer to be mixed with the red ochre to resemble blood, and has it taken to Dendera, where it floods the plains. When Hathor Sekhmet arrives in the plains of Dendera to continue killing, she sees the field of blood and drinks it, passes out, and wakes up as the peaceful Hathor, friend of humanity. This, the tale explains, is why beer is consumed at the festival of Hathor, and why one of her epithets is the Lady of Drunkenness. Once the rebellion has been put down, Ra is wary of having to rule over an ungrateful humanity, and asks the goddess Nut to carry him away to the higher heavens. Nut has no idea how to do this, but Nun obliges by turning her into a celestial cow, and Ra rides away on her back, while other gods help her to transport Ra higher and higher from the earth and the affairs of human beings. On his way up, Ra creates the field of reeds for humanity in the afterlife, and sets Osiris and Isis to rule in his place, and Thoth to rule over the night sky. The world is now governed by the gods created after and by Ra, and because the creator god has left their realm, humanity must henceforth strive to maintain Ma'at, harmony and balance, with the help of the lesser gods, whereas before, Ra had administered Ma'at. There is a clear suggestion in the text that death enters the world with Ra's departure, and people will now die and will also have to struggle to keep order. The first two are the narrative described above, and the rest to the conclusion relate spells to be recited for various occasions and provide etiological explanations for natural phenomena such as stars, the sky, and the sun's movement across the heavens. The following text comes from the literature of ancient Egypt, edited by William Kelly Simpson, translated by the scholar Eric Hornung. The gods mentioned are the gods of twilight, equated with infinity and often referenced as the infinite ones. The following reproduces only the first two sections, which give the narrative: the destruction of mankind. Once it came to pass under the majesty of Ra, the self-generated god, that when he had been in the kingship over mankind and the gods combined, mankind proceeded to contrive a plot against the person of Ra. Now that his majesty had grown old, his bones being of silver, his flesh of gold, and his hair of genuine lapis lazuli, his majesty became aware of the plot being contrived against him by mankind. And so his majesty said to those, "Please summon to me my eye, Shu, Tefnut, Jeb, and Nut, as well as the fathers and mothers who were in my company when I was in Nun, and also the god Nun," bringing his courtiers along with him. "It is stealthily that you must bring them, lest mankind see, and they lose heart as you come back with them to the palace, so that they may offer their sound advice. It is within Nun, at the place where I originated, that I shall return." So these gods were brought right away, and these gods were positioned on either side of him, touching the ground with their foreheads, in his majesty's presence, so that he might state his problem in the presence of the father of the eldest ones, the god Nun, the maker of mankind and the king of humanity. Then they said unto his majesty, "Speak to us, so that we may learn about it." Then said Ra to Nun, "O eldest god in whom I originated, and you ancestral gods, see, mankind, who originated from my eye, has contrived a plot against me. Tell me what you would do about this, since I am seeking a solution. I cannot slay them until I've heard what you might have to say about this." The majesty Nun replied, "O my son Ra, the God mightier than the one who produced you, and greater than those who created you. Stay put on your throne. The fear of you is great. Your eye shall proceed against those who conspire against you." The Majesty Ra said, "See, they have fled in the desert, the lands of chaos without order, their hearts fearful over what I might say unto them." Then they said unto His Majesty, "Send out your eye that it may smite them for you, those who have conspired so wickedly. No eye is as capable as it to smite them for you. May it descend in the form of Hathor." Then this goddess returned after she had slain mankind in the desert. The Majesty of this god said, "Welcome, Hathor. Have you accomplished that for which you set out?" This goddess replied, "As you live for me, I have overpowered mankind, and it was agreeable to my heart." The Majesty Ra said, "I shall gain power over them as king. Hold off decimating them." At this point, Sekhmet came into being, whose bloodlust was unquenchable, and so Ra must devise a plan to stop her. Ra said, "Please summon to me speedy emissaries, whose pace is as swift as a body's shadow." So these emissaries were brought immediately. Then said the Majesty of this god, "Run up to the Elephantine and fetch me red ochre in quantity." So this red ochre was brought to him. The Majesty of this great god assigned the side-locked one, who is Heliopolis, the high priest of Ra, who wore his hair in a side lock, to pulverize this red ochre, while maidservants were engaged in grinding barley for beer. This red ochre was then added to the beer mash, so that it was like human blood. 7,000 jars of beer were thus produced. Then the Majesty of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Ra, came with these gods to inspect this beer. It was the eve of the day when the goddess was to slay mankind during her days of journeying south. The words spoken of by Majesty Ra, "I shall preserve mankind from her." Then said Ra, "Transport it please to the place where she said she would slay mankind." The Majesty of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Ra, got up early in the deep of the night in order to have this intoxicating draught poured out. Then the fields became filled to a height of 3 palms with the liquid through the power of the Majesty of this god. This goddess set out in the morning, and she found these fields inundated. Her face became delighted thereat, so she proceeded to drink, and it was just fine in her estimation. She returned so drunk that she had been unable to recognize mankind. The Majesty of Ra then said to this goddess, "Welcome, darling." The Majesty of Ra then told this goddess that intoxicating draught shall be prepared for her on the seasonal feasts of the year. Maidservants shall be held responsible for this. The Majesty Ra said this to the goddess, "Has the heat of the sickness become painful?" referring to the fever of a hangover. Then said the Majesty Ra, "As I live for myself, my heart is too weary to remain with them, that I should slay them to the very last one. The reach of my arm shall in no way diminish." What the gods who were in his retinue said, "Don't withdraw with your weariness, for you still have power over what you desire." The Majesty of his god then said to the Majesty of Noon, "My body is weak for the first time. I won't wait until another gets to me." Then said the Majesty of Noon, "My son Shu, for your eye shall serve your father Ra as his protection. You shall place him upon your back." Nut replied, "But how, my father Noon?" And said Nut, "Don't be silly, Noon." And so Nut became a cow through Noon's magic. Then the Majesty of Ra placed himself upon her back. Thereupon these men came, and they saw him on the back of this cow. Then these men said to him, "We have come so that we might overthrow your enemies, who plotted against those who created them." His Majesty proceeded to his palace on the back of this cow. He did not set off with them. So the land lay in darkness. When it dawned in the early morning, these men came out carrying bows and clubs, and they found a way of shooting at the enemies. The Majesty of this god said, "Your baseness be behind you. O slaughterers. May your slaughtering be far removed from me. And so murderousness originated among mankind. Then this god said to Nut, It is in order that I may be uplifted, that I have placed myself upon your back. What is this? Asked Nut. And so she came to be there in both heavens. The majesty of this god said, Stay far away from them, humanity. Lift me up, look at me. And so Nut became the sky. Then the majesty of this god was visible within her. She said, If you only would provide me with the multitude to help me. And so the Milky Way came into being. His Majesty Ra said, Peaceful is the field here, and so the field of offerings came into being. I shall make vegetation grow in it, and so the field of reeds came into being. I shall provide them with everything, and so planets and stars came into being. Then Nut started trembling because of the height. So the Majesty Ra said, If only I had millions supporting her. And so the infinite ones came into being. The Majesty of Ra said, O my son Shu, place yourself under my granddaughter Nut, and watch over for me the two groups of infinite ones, so that they may live in the twilight. Place her over your head and nurture her. The latter part of the text of the last 3 sections involved Ra's commandments concerning Thoth and the moon, and the spells one is to recite to maintain order and prevent the chaos, which existed before Ra's act of creation at the dawn of time. Although each spell of the concluding paragraph deals with a different aspect of life, all are unified in upholding Ma'at and maintaining divine order. It really makes you wonder about these theories I see people coming up with, of this solar flare cycle, where the Earth is blasted by the sun, causing the poles to shift every 12,000 years or so. It seems the Egyptians knew of this cycle, and held it in such high regard they literally sent it to the future for us to see, by preserving it in their tombs. The Egyptians believed their bodies would be reawakened, and they would use the things in their tombs to assist them in their afterlife. It seems suspicious to me that they thought this story would be of great use and importance to them. Maybe so they can be aware when the sun god wreaks his destruction on us again. Thank you for watching this one. I'd love to know what you guys think of this text from ancient Egypt and this whole solar flare cycle theory. I definitely want to do some more videos relating to this topic. There's a few other mythological stories we could talk about that were most likely referring to a solar flare like this one from Egypt. Don't forget, these videos are posted ad-free on my Patreon for a measly $3 a month, so you can help support the channel and watch these videos without interruption, as well as gain access to all the articles I read and videos I watch when doing my research. You'll see the link to that if you scroll down to the description or the comment section. And thanks to your support, we're currently working on a website where we'll post more exclusive videos and other content. Thank you guys for watching. We'll have a new video coming very soon.